What's up, everybody? Welcome to Make Things Tiny. My name is Mick. So imagine you've got a tiny home and you've been living in it for a little bit, and one day you wake up and you realize that it's just not a good fit for you anymore. What do you transition into when you transition out of tiny life, and what's that transition like? Well, today you're in for a special treat because we're welcoming Alexis back on the channel. Alexis is going to talk about the decision to go tiny to begin with, what led to the decision to leave their tiny house, and why they decided to purchase a mobile home, and what life has been like for them since moving into the mobile home as well too. So if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe, and let's get into it. Let's hear about Alexis and get an update on their story. Right, I am here today with Alexis. Alexis, thank you so much for being back on the channel. Alexis is from This Tiny Journey on YouTube. You've got awesome stuff going on Instagram. I love watching your reels. Yeah, if you don't mind, just like talking a little bit about, for those who didn't see your first interview on the channel, what got you into tiny living, what made you switch to mobile home life, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. So Alexis, how to get into tiny living? Rent in Tampa, where I was living at the time, was stupid expensive, especially for a grad student. So I thought to myself, oh, look at this, tiny houses. I saw it on Amazon, actually, like a tiny house kit you can buy on Amazon. Obviously, I didn't go that route. That sounds shady, but I don't know about it. So then I bought a tiny house with my sister. We both got separate tiny houses, and we lived in a tiny house community for going on 6 years, I believe. And right before I moved into the tiny house, I got knocked up. So the baby grew. And then last December of 2022, I was like, yeah, I need a bigger place. Me, the baby, the cat, and the two dogs. We couldn't do tiny living. Yeah, I had a lot. And I've acquired 2 more pets since then. So I work from home, and luckily I'm gifted in the fact that I can live in the middle of nowhere, which is how I ended up in a mobile home in the countryside of Florida. I still have this tiny.
You still have it.
Everyone asked me that.
Okay. You still have the tiny house.
Oh yeah, that thing's paid off. That's not going anywhere.
So is it like a rental? Like, what are you doing with it?
It's on my property right now. Another reason why I moved to the country, because I wanted it there legally. But it's not being rented out now. I probably will Airbnb it out eventually, but my daughter's still young, and I bought a fixer-upper property and home, so I have a lot to do with the property before I feel comfortable letting someone be here.
That makes sense. Okay, cool. Well, yeah, can you talk a little bit about what made you decide on the mobile home, and like how you decided like which one you decided to buy, like that sort of thing? Like, was there any like must-haves you had to have?
Yes, I did have a couple must-haves. One, I choose mobile home because when I went tiny, I decided to myself I would never buy a traditional home again because they're overpriced, and the way they're being built these days is crap. We all know it. So that was never going to happen. I originally wanted to build like a new mobile home, but those are also very expensive, and land has gone up. Like the price of land, and do you know how much it costs to like build on unimproved or like on built land? Ridiculous. So I needed 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and I wanted a split unit because toddlers, I love my daughter. They're annoying. And I'm a single woman, so I wanted the privacy of having my daughter on the other side of the house and me on my own side of the house. I don't know why I said single woman. That sounded a little weird there, but anyways. So yeah, and then this property just came up. Exactly what I wanted. The only kicker-upper is that it was made in 1999. Okay. That was not fun. Lots of things have gone wrong, but great integrity, and it only had one owner. So yeah, that's how I ended up with this place. I really wasn't too picky. 3 bedroom, 2 baths, all I needed in my budget. Which I will talk finances if you want. I have no problem doing that.
Yeah, sure, you can. I mean, I think that's helpful for people, that kind of transparency. We don't really have too much in the industry. You just see the sticker price, and then people have a lot of questions about like why things cost as much as they do. So yeah, anything you want to share on the finance side is probably super helpful for people.
Totally. Yeah. So it was 3 bedroom, 2 bath. I think it's around 1,100 square feet, built in 1999 on 0.66 acres. So pretty big. When you're coming from tiny living and apartment living, almost an acre. And I paid $178 for it, which is how much I paid. Yeah, and at the time when I got approved for the loan, I was making $65K a year. And I had $1,200 in my bank account, mind you. I found a lender that did a down payment assistance program. So I got $9,000 in down payment assistance help. And then I agreed to pay full price for the home in, what's that word? And then I asked the seller to give me $3,000 in closing costs, which they did because I bought at a time where it was it was a seller's market, but I'm in the middle of nowhere. So you get what you get. And my interest rate locked in at
Nice.
6%, which sounds high, but at the time,
that's good.
so this was January is when I put in for the home, and March is when we actually closed because they were still living here and everything. So that was all the details. And my mortgage is $1,405, which I'm living life. I've heard some of people's mortgage prices. I'm good where I'm
for
at.
sure. Easily it could be like triple that amount nowadays. It's So did you buy the mobile home this year? Was that earlier this year?
It was 2022.
Okay.
So no, 2023. Sorry, is when I closed. So I've been here a year. March 2023 is I closed.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's not too bad though. I think that's like honestly because if you can imagine, you can buy a tiny house for $170,000. Like there are tiny homes on the market today in kind of like the luxury market where you could pay over $150,000 for them. So I think for if you own the land, you own the property, you have enough space to keep your tiny home there. Like I think that's a really reasonable price. Yeah, especially for like if you compare it to a traditional home, you're not going to get a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home for under around $200K. No way.
You couldn't find it, and like luckily, again, I have it's a superpower being able to live in the country because one, there's nothing to do here. I want everyone to know I'm bored as heck all day. Walmart is 15 minutes away. Okay, I gave up a lot. But I back up to like a state park, and I have no immediate neighbor on like the side, so it's still very private, and everybody here likes to mind their business, which is why I moved out here.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool point though that you're bringing up though, because I think that this is kind of where we're at in the housing market, right? Like you are going to have to make some sort of sacrifice. You're either going to be sacrificing on the mortgage that you're paying and like your budget, you're going to have to go up, what you actually get in the home, or where you're actually located, and sometimes all three. I think that's something I've tried to sort of hint at as best as possible in the videos I make here on the channel, because we're just not in a position in the housing market where you're going to get everything you want in the perfect location without paying for it. And I don't personally see us ever going back to a place where you can get those things. But I don't know. What do you think, especially as a homeowner? Like, do you feel like we'll ever get to a place where you'll be able to have all of those things and it won't cost you everything you have?
Absolutely not. No. I feel like if corporations weren't buying up single family homes, we'd have like a better leg to stand on. But in reality, that's happening. It's not stopping anytime soon. So yeah, sacrifices are going to happen, and I made them. So yeah.
I think it's great that you were willing to do that though, and just be as realistic as possible. And you still got what you wanted. So I think that's really awesome too. And I'm super happy for you. And I've seen you talk a bit about the renovation. So I know you're renovating right now. What is that looking like? Like, what are you working on now? What's the goal with the renovations? What challenges have you experienced with that? Because most people that are watching will end up probably getting something they have to do something to, unless it's brand new.
Yeah. So first things I would like to point out, because I know people they might say in the comments, I got an inspection. So it's not like I bought a home, did an inspection, then I had all these problems. Homeownership is just, it kind of sucks a little bit. But right now I have no AC. I haven't had AC since last May. Yeah, the thing went. It was 23 years old, so I knew it was gonna go. I just thought I had a couple more years into it. So I have to get that updated sometime relatively soon. So that is terrible. As soon as I moved in, I had to get a new water heater because the old one was too small and didn't have enough pressure to wash me and my child's black hair, which takes longer than 10 minutes. So we had to do that. I redid the floors already. Have to repaint everything. I think those are like my main. So yeah, getting the AC fixed, and then most of my land isn't cleared yet, so I can't do a lot with it. So getting that cleared, and then the trees. I didn't know this when I bought a home. It's gonna sound real dumb. I thought the trees took care of themselves. They don't. You have to pay someone to take care of them. So I have these dead trees and like trees that look like they're gonna fall over in hurricane capital of the world. So tree maintenance is another thing, which you would think, oh, that's not important. It is important because if a tree falls in someone else's home, you're
Yeah.
screwed. So those are my renovations that I'm working on now. Did I answer that question
Yeah,
right?
you did.
Sometimes I just
No, you
yap.
did.
Sorry.
That's cool that you did the floors. Like, was there something you didn't like about them, or was it just like they needed to be updated?
Yeah, they were green carpet from
Okay, got it.
1999. Green carpet. I want everyone to picture that. And old people lived there. Very nice couple. Didn't look like they vacuumed
Okay,
anything.
so they had to go.
Disgusting.
Floors had to go.
Oh, first thing I took up was those floors. Oh, they were so gross. But yeah, that's what you get. That's why my house was so
hmm
cheap.
hmm Yeah, but I feel like it's cool that you're learning, like you get to learn new skills that you can like take, to any other, future homes that you buy or anything like that. So that part's really cool. For the AC, I'm trying to think in my mind how much something like that costs. I'm afraid to ask, but I think it's helpful for people to know. How much are you anticipating for, like, how much did it cost to replace the water heater, and how much are you anticipating in terms of the bill for replacing the AC?
Yeah, so the water heater it cost me about $1,400 to replace, and I went bigger, so I had a 30-gallon tank. I upgraded to a 40-gallon tank, um, and that was the biggest they could do, or else I would have gone
hmm
bigger. But there was no space, and the AC. This is the problem. I got a home warranty. They suck. I don't recommend them at
Okay.
all. And the people that quoted me, they quoted me $6,800 for a new unit. I ain't paying for that. um, so they typically range between 5 and 10,000 if you want like a whole brand new unit and stuff like that. I barely like the people, so I'm not going to go with that. But my daughter's grandparents on her dad's side, they have a guy who can give me a used unit for
Cool.
$1,900, which won't last as long as the
Mhm.
new one, but it will get me what I need to do for like this year, and then I could save up money. So I'm gonna go with that option probably sometime in January because I spent Christmas money this month. And it's winter time, so the windows are opening in Florida. Yay! And yeah, it's
Mhm.
expensive. It's very, very expensive to do renovations and to furnish a home because when you furnish a tiny house, you get like three things. So it was
Okay,
cheaper.
that's fair. That's a good point.
This,
Okay, it's not too bad. Sixty eight
yeah,
hundred is a lot. Like I just, because most people don't have $7,000 just laying around. So that makes sense. I see where
easy.
you're going for like a preused system. So that's great that you can do that at a much cheaper cost. That makes
Yeah.
sense. And okay, so yeah, so like you briefly just touched on a comparative point. So I wanted to ask, like, what is in your opinion, since you've gone, tiny and now you're in like a different version of tiny with the mobile home, what's the biggest difference to you between a tiny house and a mobile
Okay, so your expensive with tiny living will be
home?
cheaper, hands down, unless you end up in California. They've got wild prices over there when it comes to like land and stuff. Um, but tiny house living has its own stressors because you have a lot of very unique things to tiny living, and when you try to get someone to fix those unique things, you could only go to certain
Okay.
people. And then you have to worry a lot more about mold, a lot more about mess, a lot more about what you're bringing in. Like, I just went on a Christmas shopping spree. I didn't care what I bought because I got the space for it. In tiny living, you can't do that at all. So mentally, I'm in a better place just because I've got more space. There's not clutter all the time. Animals, I don't care how good you are at cleaning, animal dander everywhere. Drives me crazy in tiny home
Mhm.
living. In the bigger house, you don't see it as much because the animals are kind of spread out. Um, do I stress every day about my finances? I don't stress about it, but I do remember when I could work a part-time job and quit whenever I wanted because my expenses were $1,300 a
Mhm.
month. I do not have that option. My expenses have since doubled, so now I have to work. So there's stress there, but I like it more for where I'm at in my life with my daughter and my farm of animals. But my little sister, who went tiny at the same time I did, still lives tiny, still childless, and it loves it. So as time changes, you'll have to change. But some people do it with kids and tiny living. I wouldn't, but
I think that's a really
I believe kids should have their own
No, I
house.
appreciate you being honest because again, this is why like I really, just enjoyed talking to you in general, and I was really happy you came on the channel the first time, and again, super happy to have you back because there is so much around like just this space in terms of tiny living space, whether you go tiny house like or you do like mobile home or like new manufactured home, whatever it is, there are trade-offs. And I think we don't really hear too much about like actually what it's like to live this lifestyle. It's mostly just, like the photos and just sort of the things that reel you in, but like then you're there. So I think that just like you being so honest and transparent, you're going to help people. There might be people watching that are thinking like, I want to go tiny. And then they listen to what you're saying. They're like, maybe I don't. Or the group that'll be like, for sure I do. Or, they're curious about mobile homes. Cause I think that like sometimes the people that are interested in tiny homes they have to consider mobile home or manufactured home as well too. You have to at least think about it because not everyone has access to land or tiny house communities nearby, but there's like a lot more like RV parks and mobile home parks and manufactured home parks in the US too. So that makes sense.
That's true too.
For the people that are watching that are kind of like on the fence and trying to decide between a tiny house and a mobile home, what advice would you give to them based off of everything that you know now in terms of like the key things to think about when making their decision?
Um, okay. I remember what I was gonna say now. This kind of goes into
Hmm.
your question. Um, so I feel like it's important. I used to say this on my channel a lot. Tiny house living is a
Hmm.
lifestyle. You have to dramatically change, especially if you're coming from an apartment, dorm, if you like grew up in a home more than 500 square feet. It's a complete lifestyle change and a complete mindset change that I don't think a lot of people are ready for. And they think that they're willing to do that change because they're like, oh, I lived in an apartment that's 800 square feet. But 800 square feet and 400 square feet feel very different, especially when you have a square versus a
Hmm.
rectangle. So before you go out living tiny, I know a lot of people say they recommend like downsizing to one room where you're living and try living that way. I also think you should Airbnb
Yep.
a tiny house if you can and see what it's like to sleep in a loft. Okay. I won't even go into my loft right now that I slept in for 6 years because being up there irritates me so much because it just got to the point where it was so annoying. So I really think people should do a lot of introspection before they spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a tiny house. That I've seen people go tiny and then a couple months later
Oh
they
my
moved
goodness.
out and it was hell. Oh, sorry, it was heck to sell it because they don't sell as well
Hmm.
as they used
Hmm.
to, um, and because they couldn't make the
Hmm.
shift. So I think manufactured home is a great another option. The problem with them are like being built nowadays, but they're pretty much a little better than paper. Okay, like the walls. I can't hang my TV up on the wall. I won't even try. It scares me. And not all of the parts are the same as like a normal home. So like when I had to like replace plumbing under the sink, I couldn't go to just Walmart and Home Depot to get the parts because they weren't the same. So you got to kind of do a little bit of workarounds. I still think it's a good option though because you don't have the same restraints of a tiny house on wheels, like finding land. Finding land for a mobile home is pretty easy. All you need is like it to be zoned mobile or single family. Um, because yeah, no one's moving this gigantic, massive thing. And then like your price point really is going to be your biggest thing. They've gotten really expensive, but you can find ones that are cheap if you're willing to put the work in for it. So I would definitely consider those type of things. And then like, are you willing to like live in a mobile home and the stereotypes that come with it?
Hmm.
Everyone thinks that we're poor crackheads. So
That is true. There,
like if we're
no, yeah,
honest,
we still do have that stigma because we have the whole like again, like in the '90s and the '80s with like the sort of stigma around trailer parks, that sort of thing. So yeah, we do have a ways to go in terms of like changing our view of mobile home parks and things like that too. But I like what you said about the lifestyle and like it's an actual lifestyle shift because I think that where we're at right now, tiny houses look really cool. Like we're in like this place right now where they're just like this really cool outfit on a runway at a fashion show and everyone's like, "Oh my goodness, I can't wait to get that," and like this, that, and other thing. But like you have to go home with that item and like your entire life changes. Like that's now your home, for better or worse. You have to think about security and what happens when you leave it and what do you do with pets. And I think that people because and I don't think it's 100% on consumers. I think it's partially because the industry is not giving any information really about what it means to actually do it. There's a few people that are willing to be really honest about it, but for the most part, people just think, it's just a house but smaller, and it's definitely not just. uh, it's not taking because it's just not set up the same way as like a traditional home. So yeah, I think it's really good advice to just encourage people to go and stay with one, see what it's like
Mhm.
for more than like just like a few, like one night, like stay for several days, because
Yeah.
you're definitely not going to be living there for one day. So one day is kind of like exciting. Maybe like after a week, you're like, oh my gosh, I'd never want to be in a tiny house ever again. Don't buy one, you know?
Yeah, I like when I went tiny, um, the 6 years ago. Well, now it's over 6 years ago, but there was no one talking about the real cons of tiny living. Like I'd look up cons of tiny living, and they'll be like, "I've got nowhere to put my toilet paper. There's no space."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, "This isn't realistic. Like I want real cons." So I will say this, as because I get a lot of parents and I get a lot of moms, single moms that want to move tiny with kids, and I won't say that you really have to love, 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 love your kid, but if you want any modicum of privacy, going tiny with kids, more than one child, I wouldn't recommend unless you have your kid outside all the time or you guys travel a lot, so you're dissociating from your life. It's very difficult being tiny with children because they're always there. Their toys are always there. They're always there. So I like try to like if you got like 2, 3 kids and 400 square feet all day, you're not gonna go
Mm-hmm.
crazy. I honestly don't know how the people on Instagram do it. Oh, I do know how they do it. They're outside
Mm-hmm.
all the time. That's why they're always on
Yeah, they're on
adventures.
adventures. I see where that would be the case, because it's kind of like living in like a giant car.
Always moving. But if you're stationary, which like a lot of people that reach out to me, I ask them, that's the first question I ask them, do you want to move a lot? Or are you just looking to downsize to have like smaller expenses? And they just want smaller expenses. So I'm like, if you're gonna go tiny, do a tiny house on foundation, then it's way easier for you to get land than if you picked a tiny house on wheels. And don't pick a schoolie. Sorry, schoolie people, but putting a schoolie on land, even more possible. Just pointing that out. You can't even classify that as an RV. I
That's
don't think.
fair. No,
Yeah.
that's good advice. I appreciate it. I think, like, I always appreciate just how honest you are. Like, I think that makes for the best information. Like, because people, they're kind of at the whim of Google. I've talked about it a lot of times. Like, if you don't talk to someone that's lived in a tiny house, then it's just you and Google, and kind of like good luck. And there's just so many factors involved in whether or not you can do it and do it in a way that makes sense for you, where you still have some money left over, so you're not like, there's no point in going tiny if you're going to be financially stressed out the entire time. Like, that defeats the entire purpose of the movement. It's ideally, it would make you feel better money wise, not worse. But
Um, yes, agreed. And that's why when anytime anyone asks me like where if I want to go tiny, where do I start? First thing I always say, look up your county
hmm
laws. Not a federal law, not a state law, your county laws, because they're vastly, vastly different everywhere. And I don't know where you live. I'm a random person on the internet. I can't tell you what your county law says. So check out county laws and then look at your finances. Those are going to be your two places to start because it's not as cheap as people think. And if you need a loan, you're going to need about 20% down. And 20% down on things at
it's a lot.
$100,000 is a good sum of
Yeah, it's a lot.
money.
Yeah,
And getting a home loan, like I got an FHA loan for this home, which is why I only need to put what
yeah.
3.5% down. Getting a loan for this house, super easy. Well, I had a job, and my like debt is pretty low. No, I had a car note at that time, so it wasn't too low, but it was low enough. Way easier than I know other people when they try to get like a tiny house loan. So there are ways to lower your expenses without going the tiny house route. And I'm all for tiny
hmm
house living, but it's drastically changed to what it used to be back in the early 2000s and then even back when I went in 2017. So I don't want people to lose hope if they can't go tiny. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's my start
Yeah, it's
there.
just about being creative. It's not that you can't do it. You just have to really kind of get creative with it, because it is going to be, it can be a little bit of a battle between the laws in your area and financing, which is a huge one, and where you're going to put it. So if you can't answer those questions, what's the law in your area, where you're going to put it, how you're going to pay for it, you're definitely not ready. So
Yeah,
that's a really good advice.
definitely. Get a friend. And like, I know this is kind of random, not random. My county, I went for like a job interview or something, yada yada. They thought I lived in a tiny house. They straight up said this county would never be tiny house friendly. Okay. So a lot of counties, they feel that way. It's just not feasible. It's not logical for them on their standpoint, so they won't do it. You can make changes. Obviously, I see people make changes all the time, but you have to be willing to put in that legwork to make changes or move to a county where it's okay.
Yeah, that's true.
That
Yeah,
makes
I've
the
mentioned that before. Like, are you willing to relocate? If you're willing to move anywhere in the United States, you've significantly increased your opportunities for going tiny and what that looks like, and potentially going tiny at a much cheaper amount too, in terms of what you're going to spend.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I know some people are really, they're location bound, and I think that's perfectly fine. But yeah, that can definitely limit your options too. Yeah.
And where are you willing to live? I lived on a horse farm for 6 months, illegally, mind you. That was legal, but it was a place to stay, and it flooded
Oh my goodness.
terribly. We needed mud boots every time we left the house because it was so bad.
No.
But it was a place to put the
Yeah,
house. So.
that's true. You have to be scrappy.
Oh yeah, Craigslist. The amount of backwards sites I went on to try to find a place to live should be scary. But at the time, you're just like, I just need a place to put it. Adventures.
And it all worked out. You transitioned. You're in your place. You're doing renovations. So I'm glad to see that things are going really well, and things are working out for you. That's really great to see.
Thank you. Yes, lucky. I just got lucky. I was able to buy a house at the right time. I found a great realtor. Actually, she found me. She meant to be on Instagram. And then I was willing to I probably put in close to $10,000 in this house. I don't even know where I got the money. It just comes into my account and it's out of my account. But it was ugly for a really long time, and I was willing to live in an ugly place in the middle of nowhere. I mean, gunshots at night every other day. You get used to it when you're out in the country, though. Dead deer everywhere. But my house is cute and cozy. And there's 3 basements, 2 baths.
Yeah. No, it's great. No, I'm super happy for you, and I appreciate you taking the time to chat with us and to just share an update and just give people even more information about what it's like to go tiny and to leave and to do everything that you're doing. So I appreciate it, and links to social media and everything will be in the video description, so they can reach out and ask questions. More people, I'm sure, will reach out and ask you questions. But yeah, I appreciate it, and you're welcome on the channel anytime. But yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you, Alexis.
You're so kind. Thank you. It's fun.
Yeah, it's awesome. Cool. All right, that was my conversation with Alexis. I appreciate Alexis coming back on the channel and just being honest with us and being super transparent about their experience. What are the pros of going tiny? What are the cons? What made them decide to leave their tiny house and move into a mobile home? What was that financing situation like? So this is a really awesome experience for those of you to be able to hear from Alexis. Make sure you reach out. Links to everything that they're doing in the video description. Ask questions. I can't stress this enough, and Alexis reiterated this as well too. You've got to talk to people. You've got to go stay in a tiny house for like a week or at least 3 or 4 nights in an Airbnb. Make sure it's right for you. There's so many different ways to go tiny, and there's ways to be creative around financing too. So make sure you reach out and ask questions. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe. And if you haven't seen Alexis's first interview, you can check it out here as well too. Thank you all so much for watching, and don't forget to think tiny. I'll see you in the next one.